I'll never forget the lessons, the experiences, the relationships that I built in basic training. The things that I went through in those very short 30-day basic training. 30 days seemed long then, but compared to some of the other branches, the Air Force has a pretty chill basic training.
Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast, 5-minute videos, 5 days a week.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. There's a question that raises up in the minds of young men especially, and I'm guessing it does for young women as well, but I'm not one, so I can't say for sure. But as a young man and having raised two young men, I know there's a transition coming out of high school where one of the questions that churns in the mind of a man is, what am I going to do with my life? Do I go off to college? Do I go to a VOTEC school where I just learn a trade for that particular industry and I learn how to do that particular thing? Or do I go off to the military and serve as a soldier? And part of the challenge of that question, especially in wartime, is, do I really want to put my life on the line? Is every job in the military a risky job? So I want to make some clarifications on a lot of that transition because I looked at it from a lot of different ways. First off, I came right out of high school and I had a fascination with all the things that I couldn't figure out. I know that sounds weird, but learner is my number one. And so if there's something that's a little bit challenging, it's a little bit different, it's a little bit more complicated than meets the eye, I'm always fascinated by it. And at the time, that thing was electronics. I really wanted to go into robotics. I wanted to build robots. That's what I wanted to do with my life. And the more I understood about electronics, the more I understood I didn't know anything about electronics. It's kind of like quantum physics. If you think you figured it out, you're wrong. Start over because you missed something. Electronics has some of those aspects to it. If you want to go deeper into that, just concept, just go back and study some of Nikola Tesla's stuff from way back when, the turn of the century, and you're going to see some pretty interesting ideologies and mathematical equations that are mind-boggling. Good stuff. But 1 year into my electronics engineering trade school, the idea of going to a trade school rather than a 4-year college was I could get my degree, my certificate, my associate's degree in 2 years and get right into the work field, making good money and continue to work toward a bachelor's degree or master's degree or something later if I decided to do that. But I could be making really good money after just the first 2 years because in the late 80s, people who could work on tiny little electronics, they were not common. So ITT offered a great program. It was affordable, it was close to home, and it was going to get me right into a job in 2 years. But 1 year in, I broke up with my high school sweetheart. Actually, she broke up with me and left me a bit of an emotional wreck. And so I gave up. And I went and signed up for the military. I thought at least they'll get me a long way from home and I can go travel the world and start my life over. And so I took my electronics training and I went to the military and said, I want to do EOD, explosive ordnance disposal. I want to work on bombs. And they loved my electronics training, but then my security clearance wouldn't pass because I had too many speeding tickets. So I ended up a firefighter. Well, as a firefighter in the Air Force, there were very few of us who actually ended up on the front line. There were some of our firefighters right out of my squadron, right out of my fire department who actually got deployed to the sand in Kuwait, who were fighting the Camel Spiders and the Iraqis at the same time. But I wasn't one of them. I never did get deployed to a fighting zone. I was at a support base in Honduras, and I was at a support base in England, and I was at a training base in Lubbock, but I never went to the front line. So other than being a firefighter, my life was never really in any danger, but here's what I did experience. A whole lot of growing up in a really short period of time. See, there are a lot of young people that go off to college and part of their mind, probably better than half of their brain, asks where's the best party school. Because they feel like this is the season in their life after high school, 12 years worth of learning, and before adulthood that I just get to goof off and cut up and get a degree that'll make me rich, but at the same time it's for partying. This is for sowing my wild oats. This is for just cutting loose. I'm out from under my parents' thumb, but I'm not yet in the world of working, so I can just be a fool. And there are a lot of people who take college kind of that way. It's not really about preparing for the future as much as it's about, I'm going to cut loose and enjoy the now. In the military, there's not a whole lot of that. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for that. So the type of people, even though they're the same age range, that 18 to 25 or 30 years old in the first 4 years, that age range is still pretty learning how to be a grown-up. But the military, whether it's basic training or it's your first duty station or it's just being shoved into a workplace where everybody around you is intense, where work order is intense, where hierarchy is intense, where people can tell you what to do and then ruin your life if you say, no, I'm not doing that. See, in the regular working world, or even if you take a job delivering pizzas or working at Subway, or even if you get a job as an intern while you're going to college, your own internal attitude could well up and go, I'm not doing that. Well, fine, then quit. That's not an option in the military. You've been sworn in. You're going to have to buck up. You're going to have to learn what it means to shut up, sit down, and do what you're told. And that submission to authority is a hard thing for some people. But it means a very fast growing up for a lot of people. It's not the party school opportunity going through basic training and off to your first base. Those who go to Marine Corps and then on to the Navy SEALs and things of that nature, those guys got it tough. And the gals too. They get beat up a lot. But they come out completely different people. Completely different people. One of the young ladies that we've known since she was 16 or 17 years old, she was a handful. She was in all kinds of trouble when she came into our lives. She got into even more trouble. But then she went off to the Marine Corps. She went through all of the training and injured on the job, putting a missile on an aircraft, and ended up with a lifetime disability and came out of the military as a disabled vet. But the growing up that she did while she was on active duty, while she was going through basic training, while she was serving in the military, so a whole different person came back to us than the one that left. So if you're asking the question, should I go to trade school? Should I go to college? Should I go to the military? I want to tell you that everybody's personality is a little bit different, and every one of those scenarios is going to serve everybody a little bit different. But I can be really clear with you and say this. Unless you've just got a couple $100,000 or $250,000 laying around to go to college with, if you think that you're going to go off and party and play for 4 years and come out with a $50,000, $60,000 a year job, the world is changing. I can literally, with the same iPad that I'm videoing this lesson, I could turn it around and go online and take college courses from Oxford or Harvard or Princeton or Notre Dame at zero charge and learn the same information that people are paying $250,000 for. That's not an exaggeration. Go to edX.com and check it out if you think I'm lying. So the value of that education is not increasing as much as it's diminishing. What really is important in those 4 or 5 years after high school is growing up. So whether it's a trade school that gets you what you need to get the income you need to get so you can take the time to grow up in a job, or it's going into the military so you can grow up and get paid to do it, I think both of those are phenomenal options, especially for young people who don't come from a lot of wealth, who are going to have to work their way through anyway. And having done both trade school and the military, and now I study on my own at my own pace, whatever I'm fascinated in for the day, and I consider myself pretty well read. It's a path you might consider, but more than you consider anything else, just understand that the greatest asset you have is you. Take care of your body, take care of your brain, and while you have the chance, grow up. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.